everybody by the end of this week. So you shouldn't need the Pro subscription anymore. We expect to do this for many features as we launch. Just allows us to test with a smaller set of users. And then once the initial bugs are fixed, you can expect them to roll out to everybody. That's the first one. Snaps and Cast Composer. This was actually rolled out to everybody. You should be able to make snaps in the Composer. We have landed various improvements since originally launching this. If you find any bugs or have any questions, feel free to reach out. The goal here is to just, if you're in the client, you can just make snaps. It's easy, it's free, and should be pretty quick as well. Cool. Expo 55, this was a major upgrade on our clients. If you're not familiar with what Expo is, it's a build pipeline we use for our React Native clients for Android and iOS. It was on 53 for the longest time, and the previous team had mentioned that it needed to be upgraded to 55. 53 reached its end of life, and the 55 upgrade had a lot of breaking changes, which resulted in a bunch of client bugs that we are still working through. It's sort of expected for any large major change like this, but it's also pretty painful. And we appreciate everybody working through it and filing the bugs and letting us know. You might still be seeing some of this, in which case, please reach out and let us know. One thing you can do on your end is there's two ways we push updates. One is through the native builds that you'll see on the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store. Go to the app page and see if there's a build waiting for you. The search page doesn't always show it, so you actually have to go to the full app page. And after the native build, there's also an over-the-air update, which we call an OTA update. So once you get the latest native, just restart your app a few times, and that should deliver the OTA update. On the settings page on your app, you can, at the bottom of the settings page, you can see what version you're on. If you're filing a bug with us, if you let us know the version and your device, that makes it much easier for us to start diving in. And please let us know when you find bugs, and we are going to continue looking into this. I think it is in a better state, or at least in a more confined state now than it was before, where it was impacting a much larger cohort of people, and we have continued to narrow that down. But we want to get it down to 0. So as you see things, please report, and we'll continue looking into that. Moving on from that, on the home feed, we have a new feature upcoming for translation, where we have noticed a bunch of people, and this has historically been a pretty commonly asked for feature, where if you cast in a different language, your casts just get hidden from people who don't speak that language. And so now your casts will be auto-translated and show to other people, depending on whether they're interested in that content. Again, needs a little bit of tweaking before we can actually start pushing this out, but we're working on it right now. In the meantime, we have had a bunch of spam improvements on bots, scam mini apps. A lot of this should be hidden now. If you look at the protocol data underneath, there's still a lot of incoming such items, but they shouldn't be showing up in the app as much. So if you see them, please report. It's kind of a constant cat and mouse game, but our systems are much better at this than they were a few weeks ago. Two additional things that we actually expected to launch before this call, but they're still in progress because they turned out to be harder than we initially expected. Kind of quintessential story with new features. One is we had an in-app browser, which we still do, but it requires a lot of improvements. When we originally launched it, it was catching people off guard at the wrong times. So we have some improvements planned for that, and we'll re-enable it with the settings so people can make it the default way to browse or not, depending on what they want to use. That should be out, I would say, a couple of weeks from now, maybe closer to the next community call. The second one is a private wallet. This we have also wanted to have out before today, but there were a bunch of architectural changes that we needed to make in order to make this feasible, where the way the app was previously built was more suited to one wallet inside the app and one wallet seed phrase outside of the custody seed. So to make it such that it can handle multiple wallets with different seed phrases, we've had to do a bunch more work than we initially expected. We are close to the end here, though, so hoping to get that out over the next week or so. And both should be new client features. So let me pause there. Any questions on the client? Okay, we'll keep moving. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand and unmute. Developer. So update here, we're going to make Nanar mostly free for everybody, which means the Nanar developer platform. So the starter tier and the growth tier will go away. It will all get consumed by the free tier. And people will only pay for scale or enterprise. The reason we have scale or enterprise is simply because at a certain volume of usage, it's not really sustainable to just have free usage. So at that point, you can sign up for scale. And if you're using any of our enterprise products, which require us to set up custom data pipelines for you or do some kind of custom indexing, those have always been enterprise products and require manual work, and they'll stay on enterprise, and they require you to reach out to us anyway. From a statistical point of view, we have very few handful users on scale and enterprise. So in most cases, you'll just be able to use it for free now. And that should land early June, I think. So something to look forward to there. Any questions on that? Clanker. So Clanker Ecosystem Fund, the first grant should go out closer to the end of this month, tomorrow. Nanish Prof and Adrian are running it from the GM Farcaster side. There will be more details on this tomorrow, but in the meantime, if you have questions, feel free to send them their way. On the Clanker side, generally, we've landed a few improvements across token discovery, search, trending tokens. We have some experiments lined up for new agentic products. I think it's still a couple of weeks away. And so we'll share more on it as we actually get closer to the MVP. There's a bunch of new tools you can build with in the ecosystem now with Venice and stuff. So there's some new things we want to try. And longer term, this is a multi-month project where we are starting to think about what the V5 of the contracts look like, where there's a bunch of new feature asks that have come up as people have used V4. And the V4 contract is a pretty good contract. People are still using that today. But as we think about how to serve those feature requests, we can create a V5 version of the contracts. And that'll require both a bunch of upfront work and then going through the audit process, which is a pretty long-running thing compared to our general quicker experiments. But hopefully by the end of it, will allow people a lot more customization and flexibility when it comes to launching assets on chain. So more to talk about there as we get into it, and maybe we'll put out some GitHub requests for comments, etc. But calling it out early as we begin on that multi-month exercise. So let me pause there. Questions? Let me see. So Townlet Clanker is not on mainnet. Yeah, I think it's available on mainnet if you use through the SDK and pay for your own gas fees. But I don't know if Arthur's on the call and can correct me as needed. If not, we'll have to get back to you. But I think it's generally that because mainnet gas fees are higher, we don't pay for mainnet token launches. But you can go launch a token manually on mainnet and pay the gas yourself, and that should be doable.
I did tag Arthur in that thread to answer that, so there should be an answer though.
Okay. Yeah, seems like it is available on mainnet. Okay. Any other Clanker related questions? Okay. Kevin,
I have one, Rish, real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I noticed that when you claim fees from certain clankers, you can now claim the fees irrespective of whatever the original clanker was. And that seems to be different behavior than what it used to be. And it's more convenient this way. Claim the fees once and then, hey, you get it all. But it was for example, I would go into the detail view of a coin that had no buy or sells recently, and for some reason it had fees claimable. And I'm like, okay, cool. I do that and navigate to a different coin, and there would have been the fee. It would have been the fees for that ticker, for example. And is this a new usability improvement, or is this just something I didn't notice before?
Arthur might be. Manu, do you want to invite Arthur onto this call if he isn't?
Yeah,
already?
let me Slack him. Give me a second.
It sounds like a usability improvement. I'll double check for you and get back. It does seem like, though, that even if it is a usability improvement, maybe there's some UI we can add on top to make that clearer that you're claiming fees across tokens. So that's good feedback.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, it used to suck going into every single coin trying to get 111. So like when I did it for, just a single click and then it worked, I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. Then I drilled into another coin because habit, and then there's no fees left. And I'm like, oh, okay, so if that's how that works now, that's cool.
Yeah, we can make that clear. That's good info. One other note on Clanker, I actually forgot to add that here. But maybe some of you might have noticed yesterday there was a specific sniper who got exploited on Clanker because they didn't use the sniper auction contract correctly. And it was originally put out on the timeline as a possible exploit on Clanker itself. But there are no actual exploits on Clanker. Our documentation pages talk about how to use the Clanker sniper auction contract. And if you use the contract the way it's mentioned in the documentation pages, there's no change and everything there should be good. But yeah, if you have like some kind of bad approvals, like the issue in this case was they were not doing atomic approvals and they just had lagging approvals where somebody else could go and claim the fees from them. They got exploited and lost some fees there. We're still working with them to see how we can, make this right for them. But just in case you see something, there's no like Clanker related issue here. Cool. Moving on from Clanker, Kevin, who runs protocol, is out on personal leave right now. We'll be back later this month. So Manan, if you want to run protocol today.
Yeah. Arthur's on in case there was any question.
Arthur, the question was around, actually you can, Faisal, if you want to just put the question in chat and Arthur can respond there and we can pick back up. Cool. Yeah, Manan, you can pick up protocol.
Cool. So on the protocol side, Snapchain signers, this is the gasless signers FIP. This is live, so anybody can issue gasless signers now and start using them to broadcast to the protocol. They're also permissioned, so you can grant granular level of permissions, not like it doesn't have to be like cast or like a global level. So you can pick and choose like specific granular permissions. We haven't moved Farcaster backend over to using Snapchain signers as of yet. That's in the pipeline. Kevin, who worked on implementing Snapchain signers, once he gets back from leave, he's going to be working on some of this. For the second bullet here, live activity status, that has been implemented and it has been pushed out as a release. But the activation is scheduled for June 4th, so sometime next week. And for the live activity manifest, we're still in review, finalizing some of the details there, and then we can move on to implementation stage there.
One quick thing I'll add on the live activity status and manifest is that this is part of the Spaces rollout that we are doing so that we can kind of have some cross-client compatibility. The first version we expect here is super simple, where another client can read the URL of a live activity and just pop open a web view on their client. And that should allow the user on that client to not have to switch clients and be able to join this experience. And then over time, as we have more such things happen, we can make it finer grained and build it in a way that you can do this natively on the native client. The current FIPs, for them to allow native, they're just strictly complementary. So this is the simplest version out there. Question in the chat, the live activity manifest, how does this work for other clients integrating the spaces that exist on the Nane or Farcaster app today? Does it include the API key needed to connect to the space? I think if you just open the web view, Manan, we'll make that.
So Yeah, so joining will come after the native integration for Spaces. So right now, liveness is what's getting pushed first. The next piece is that you can open a web view and you can listen in on a space and then emit that particular, on behalf of that particular user, that they are live. So other clients can demonstrate that, okay, somebody on another client is actively listening. The ability to have speakers from across clients would be next as part of like the permissioning. And we need to figure out a fixed set of APIs that we would want that can allow for alternative clients to kind of like request permission, and it would be authenticated based on which user is trying to raise their hand to speak. And then we'd go according to that. So we'd pass on like an authenticated URL back to the client. So it's like the speaking portion is gonna be the last part of this. It's not gonna be immediate, but like the listening portion will be live right after we kind of like implement 269. So any clients would be able to listen and emit liveness.
And the live activity status is more than just Spaces the way it's implemented. So even a simple thing like a green presence dot list to names. So if you want to, like, similar to Slack, if you want to show who is active right now in your client, the live activity status bit can be used for stuff like that. So it's meant to be a more generic bit that you can use across a set of live events. And then you can use the manifest to denote exactly what kind of takeaway you want the client for that bit.
Yeah, as Irish mentioned, like it might be for video streaming use cases as well in the future, but yeah. Okay, I see one more follow-up question here. Why was it pushed into the release before then? Which release, if you can clarify?
Yeah, I mean, this release, the 0.12 release, effectively, like, yeah, sure, it's great that, you know, other clients can also use this feature, but like if the primary publisher of these messages right now has full support of being able to actually speak in them, then other clients are second-class citizens. Like, why was this pushed into the protocol so soon?
I mean, we could have, I guess, waited, or you're free to not use these features if you're going to wait for the speaker activation. But it's, to us, it seemed better where you can join as a listener as opposed to nothing. And so we just staggered it out. So nothing to listening to joining as a speaker. If you don't want to add it to your client to have them listen in and you would rather wait for speaker, you're welcome to wait. Cool. Manan, do you want to cover the rest?
Yeah, there's a few questions. Maybe I'll wait until we get to Q&A. All right, Snapchain improvements. I'll rush through this. There were some changes as we were working on the Snapchain signers piece where we needed to tune RocksDB to like across the common code path. So we ended up doing that. On our end, as we operated nodes on our end, we had to consolidate some of the deploy pipeline across both like Merkle as well as like Nanar nodes that we were running. So consolidated that alongside with observability. So before it was scattered across Grafana and Datadog, but now we've consolidated to Grafana. There's also some consensus visibility tooling that we had to add in order to debug some issues that we were having on mainnet. The new tooling is live on testnet. It'll get deployed to mainnet pretty soon. And then again, like as part of this, like on call, where like we have to operate these nodes. The volume of logs that Snapchain originally had was like just really hard to find any signal. So we had to tune it to a point where like it's actually parsable and we can find the appropriate things to be able to act fast. And then there's one planned piece around moving to the actively maintained Malachite fork instead of the older one. This is still planned in terms of like prioritization, might be towards the end of next month where we end up picking it up, given that there's a bunch of other things that are in flight, and Kevin's still coming back from leave later this week. Yeah, so that covers most of the improvements there. There's also a request out open to others for running additional Snapchain validators. We are focused on like operators that might be wanting to run this in a new geo, because that's the one key piece that we want to be testing out right now. And we will be continuing with our test for like operating a validator setup that is in Mumbai for testnet. And for if we can establish that on testnet, we are able to run that for a sustained amount of time without disruptions, then we can work with these new validator operators to kind of like deploy it on mainnet in the new geos. So that's the approach that we're taking there. The last bullet is mainly a plug about other Snapchain issues that are documented there. If anybody wants to be contributing, that would be the first part.
Cool. Questions? Yep, Luis.
Hi, Rich. Hi, Manan. I would like to ask something. What is your incentive for building a protocol as Neinar?
Our app works on the protocol, and we expect to build the company around an open source protocol, and that's why we took this up.
So right now, your main focus is on client, is on protocol. How do you intend to make money out of this?
Our main focus areas are what we just covered on the call, and you can see what the focus is across client and protocol. It's unclear how we make money out of this. I think it was unclear even before when Marco was working on it. So I think we'll have to gain clarity over time. I think there's not been a lot of revenue positive outcomes here, and we'll have to go figure that out. Open to ideas.
And last question before I go, it's did you made more revenue before you owned Farcaster, the client and the protocol, or now that you're part of the whole thing?
From Neinar
Yes.
products, you mean? Oh, definitely made way more before, when Farcaster was on a much higher note during the 2024 time, right? And when Coinbase was using Farcaster, et cetera. And we are about to make even less now that we are going to make Neinar developer products free. So yeah, definitely making less revenue now.
So wait, so you're making free what was paid before, and where are you making it free? So where the money comes from, or what's the incentive there, right?
We are a venture-backed company. We have many years of runway.
That means like you have money to spare, right?
Correct. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what the questions are moving towards. These are a series of questions. Feel free to send me these questions in chat or separately. But also want to make sure we have questions from other people in the last few minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, JD.
Thanks, Rich. A little question and a larger underlying question. You started off talking about client bug report flows. I wonder, do you all have enough volume of inbound bug reports that it's worth considering creating a sort of a flow built into the client that pre-populates device fingerprint and build number and those sorts of things, just so that you are able to streamline the
That's a
end
good idea.
user's ability to say, I'm not having a good experience and I need to give you as much information as possible as quickly as possible, because the longer it takes me, the less likely I am to report it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. Thank you.
The larger question to the, I've appreciated these calls, you know, that you all have picked up this particular torch. I wonder, time is sort of a pressing thing for a lot of folks, even though it's sort of, I mean, it's more existential for you than it is for any of us. I wonder if, as you go forward, organizing these conversations around, here are the things we're going to deploy within the next 7 days. Here are the things that we're going to deploy in the next 30 days. Here are the things that we're working on over the next 90 days, the next 120, right? Because there's been plenty of conversation in, you know, the FC Union call, to name just one, around what the validator node process looks like, right? And when and where you all are in that process. And so it's good to hear that you're moving forward with a test, but I guess structuring this call in a way such that somebody who's listening understands what expectations they ought to have of you and Manon and the team on what sort of time scale might be worthwhile, because you have your internal set of priorities in order to make the business successful as well as to make the protocol successful. But those of us who are on the outside, all we can really judge is how many days this has been since, you know, insert my personal favorite priority has seen any spotlight in a forum like this.
Yeah, good question. I think for validators specifically, a good end of the year goal would be where Nanar doesn't run the majority number of validators. And as part of that, we want to deploy validators in different geos. We want to have different parties deploy validators. And by the time we are through that process over the next, let's say, 6 months, we want to be at a point where 50% or more of the validator operators on Snapchain are not Nanar. And that would be a good outcome. That's kind of what we are shooting for. Once we have that, then we can add on other kinds of validator-related goals, but not having us as the majority seems like a good goal to us at the time.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Cool. Eggman.
Hey, Rish. Apologies again for going without a webcam, but it's about 32 degrees over here at the moment, so I am at my desk in my boxers, and I don't think anybody needs that in their life right now. But,
Yeah.
hey, man. So, yeah, I'm just kind of following on from yesterday with that Git conversation that I was running through on it. So, look, I've already said myself that I do understand the need to kind of just focus more on growth and stability right now. But I did think it was a little, I guess, short-sighted to, you know, just say we look at it in 6 to 12 months rather than kind of, you know, have an acceptance criteria and stuff like that. So I know we're saying, you know, we want to get far more people running validators and stuff like that. Do you think that that's something where, you know, it's going to have to be stock Snapchain for somebody to actually run that validator? Or do you think, you know, in the case of, say, Hypersnap, which, you know, I do understand the risk of having, you know, something extra kind of running on top of it, or having, you know, any sort of stuff there that requires more than just saying, yeah, it's a validator. But do you think that that's something that will be kind of possible over the next, you know, say 6 to 12 months? Or is there any kind of acceptance criteria you'd have in mind for it? Like, just for me, it's more seeing, you know, you've got very talented developers in, you know, Cassie and Flex and other people kind of supporting, wanting to, you know, have Hypersnap running with things as well, and having this kind of, I guess, more cohesive kind of, you know, unification of communities where, you know, you can do your own thing, but also be part of what we call, like, you know, the main Farcaster family, etc. Like, what are kind of your thoughts around that stuff? Do you think it's something that, you know, there could be acceptance criteria kind of laid out for in the near future, or is it something that is just kind of not, you know, directly on the roadmap right now?
Yeah, good question. And maybe we'll have to add more detail as we go, but I'll try to do my best to answer here. And then Manan, feel free to chime in as well. So I think at a high level, we are just trying to separate variables. We are trying to separate variables of like, hey, can we have the block time sync across far enough geographies? That's the first variable that we are looking at. Then the variable we are looking at is how stable is the network when we are at less than 50% of the validator operators. And then we can look at maybe one of the variables being like node client diversity, where you can have Snapchain as one node client and you can have other node clients as part of it. It seems a little backwards to me to look at node client diversity before, let's say, Nanar is majority, where I think the decentralization would be much better off if we removed ourselves from being the majority, and then we can keep working through these other variables. And so in terms of timeline, I think a high level timeline would be that, hey, this year is about removing ourselves from the majority. And then next year, we can start looking at node clients diversity. Or any of the other variables that people might bring up in the meantime. And I think it's reasonable, like we are working on this from a multi-year perspective, and there's a lot of work to do. And I don't think there's a real reason to like shove everything into the same month or same set of months. And so if we just keep making progress through this, I think we can all land in the right place. Manan, feel free to chime in if I missed something.
I think that's on point.
Yeah, I appreciate the candidness of it as well. Like I know it's obviously a difficult thing to run into, and as I said yesterday, I think this is something that ideally should have been done when it was Merkel with a very large amount of money and able to kind of jump into this stuff. So I appreciate you're not being put in the most wonderful position to have to kind of eye out how to do all of this stuff. So when it does come to running validators, have you had any thoughts of, what could incentivize users to actually run them? Now, I'm not saying tokens or anything like that, but what I've found kind of over the past couple of years is you'll get people, running an Ethereum node. It's very hard to get them to run kind of anything else unless they're essentially being told you'll get something that can be exchanged for money on it. And I guess that's kind of where I look at Hypersnap again, in that they have a pretty, they have their own token and stuff like that. So it's possible to have those validator rewards running out of it. But I also understand that that's, it would be an A side to running an actual, just a standard Snap validator. So have you had any kind of thoughts around that do you think that these incentives should be kind of third party, as in, stuff like Hypersnap would have their own incentives that kind of sit on top of it? Or do you think there is something that would come in kind of more direct just on Snapchain when it comes to running a validator for the average everyday person?
Yeah. Happy to talk to both of them. I'll also address some of the things in the chat. I will note, by the way, we are 6 minutes over. I'm happy to stay on, but anybody who wanted to jump at the 30-minute, feel free to leave. For token incentives, I think we generally have more lenient approach to tokens than what Dan and Merkel might have had, partly simply because we are in a better regulatory framework now. And presumably it'll only get better in the US House and Senate. That said, we don't think that like right now, immediately is the time where we will launch a token to incentivize node operators. We first have to get to the point where you can kind of add and remove nodes or even validators in a way that keeps the network stable. We are frankly not there right now. Like we have to be able to get to a point where we are not the majority, where people can like come in, add validators, remove validators, and the network stays healthy. We expect to get there. And as we get closer to that I think is a good time to then think about incentives and think about how like running a validator and helping secure the network actually gives people something back in return. So I don't think that would be a this year thing. Maybe second half of next year thing, but incentives would definitely be like, we would look at client diversity before we would look at like token incentives maybe. And that's something to be figured out in 2027. There was other question you had about how the incentives sit on top. I don't think I can speak to how any other incentives that have been launched in the space. But if running a Farcaster...
Oh yeah, it's I was more saying like, would you look to incentivize yourself, or would it be more reliant on, third party systems like HyperSnap to offer an incentive on top. So you're saying that you will be looking to kind of roll out your own in-house incentives that will kind of come with running.
Yeah, I think that would make sense if everything goes right. And yeah, I think we are in a better environment now. I see the comment about Elizabeth Warren, and yeah, that can't speak to her, but as long as we're in a better environment, I think it would make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, sorry, I know you are running over. I just want to say, like, thanks for your time. I know this stuff is difficult to kind of keep track on with so much happening all at once. I appreciate that, we're speaking candidly about it as well. I would love to see a little bit more of, I'm not going to say, throw a bone to the decentralization aspect of it, because it is very important in the long term, I do believe. But I would like to see maybe a little more direct work on that side, or even just something like those, that acceptance criteria, stuff like that, where there's kind of, a game plan in place. Because my fear would just more be that, we have a lot of really good talent right now, and I would hate to see us really fragment into two different networks because of what's really, I think, disagreements that can easily be solved with, sitting down and actually chatting about things. And that's not saying that it's all from, 100%, NANAR have to do this or anything like that. I think there's a middle ground for everyone here that we could sit down, say what the acceptance criteria are. And look, I think we're all really aimed towards the same goal. It's just, timeframes come into it. And that's when, tempers can flare, and as you know yourself, generally talking about things directly through, GitHub commits and stuff like that. It's a lot different than sitting down and actually chatting with someone. But yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing, Rish. And yeah, looking forward to seeing more on it.
Cool. Thanks, Eggman. Appreciate it. Agree with a lot of the things here, and I think Monan did put out like a cast about acceptance criteria yesterday. We'll make it more formal in the Farcaster updates channel, maybe. But I think the main goal for this year, just so that we are all on the same page on this call, is to have NANAR as the non-majority runner. And that's what we are going to shoot towards. Cassie, I saw your earlier comments. And thank you for letting us know it's not running Snapchain. Like, we try to be as honest and upfront as we can, and we appreciate other people doing the same. And so I appreciate you doing that. The previous things about direct cast and whatnot, I can't really speak to that. But we are working on this, and we are here live talking about it, so you can hold us accountable, and everybody on this call can hold us accountable. And we are going to try and do what we said, which is land validators in different geos and try to be the non-majority runner by the end of the year. And after that, we can look at other ways to enhance diversity. And by diversity, I mean node client diversity and other ways of decentralization. In the meantime, if you did want to run a Snapchain node, we'd be happy to look into that. Any other questions?
Can I also add with the incentivizing validators? It's something that we're talking about what pro can look like in the future too. That's been in the conversation around. A big part of not bringing pro back right away is where does the money go and what does that money do to benefit the community? And that's still a problem we have to solve.
Cool, thank you. Luis, I see a hand up. This is a call for non-developers, for what it's worth. You should invite whoever you want to this call. There's many people on this call who are not developers, and we are happy to address that here. Is there a question? We are 15 minutes over. I'm gonna. Okay, thanks. We can increase the next one to 45 minutes. There won't be a call that is a separate call from this call. This is the call. You can invite them here.
We actually
Cassie?
used to host these for an hour, but they didn't last an hour, and so we
Yeah.
shortened it to 30 minutes. So
Yeah,
we're
I'm happy to extend it
them.
next time. Cassie, we can move over to you. Next month.
They're monthly. If you look at the link that the Farcaster account casted out, there's a calendar invite on there that'll put it on your calendar recurring. Because they're just scheduled once a month.
That is correct. Cassie.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the thing that I had said. Like, yeah, I get it. It's not stock snap chain. But you did iterate what seems to be like a not formalized, but at least some kind of acceptance criteria that, you know, if people are wanting to add another validator that is running snap chain, then they'd start on testnet, validate that it, like, prove that it's not, you know, disruptive to the network, that blocks are being properly formed and everyone's keeping consensus. If that's true for stock snap chain, what's the difference between a node that speaks snap chain all the same?
Yeah, so there's it just introduces multiple variables for us to account for right now. Right now we're working on problems that will be helping us decentralize from a geo standpoint. So from a network and latency standpoint, how blocks get propagated, how messages get propagated, and so on. So we're working essentially at the networking layer. And then if we introduce another variable into the mix, now we're working with like consensus problems and like debugging those issues, trying to push those out. It's not ideal for us to be working on like multiple problems all at once, which is why like we have a roadmap. Yeah.
Sure, I get where you're coming from about that, but I literally built the network that you're talking about here, so I am qualified to speak about it. I do understand what your concerns are, and what I'm saying is we meet the bar on that. So if there's no difference in terms of how it interacts at the consensus layer, because there is no difference on how it interacts at the consensus layer, I just don't understand this resistance and hesitation. Like,
so if there is no difference, then like my question to you would be that why the insistence on running a hypersnap validator? Why not run a snap chain validator and then direct peer it with a hypersnap node?
Yeah, that's actually pretty simple. The fact is, and the reason why hypersnap was created,
so we'd be fine with that approach if we want to take that approach. The main criteria is that this has to be operated in a different geo, it has to be non-NR, and it has to be running Snapchain, the additional validator runners that we're looking for.
Yeah, that doesn't actually answer the question, though. That's just railroading what I was saying. Like the reality is that it speaks Snapchain, and so like the hesitance isn't making sense from a like development standpoint.
In terms of it speaks Snapchain, like it definitely lags behind in terms of like development. We have to merge in code from time to time. Even the hypersnap repo, I don't see CI tests running the consensus tests that are baked in on Snapchain. Like I don't see.
We don't use GitHub Actions because to do that it costs money, and we're a community team. We're not a venture-backed company.
Right. Regardless, like there's no evidence that has been presented as part of this that there's as much testing behind this. There, like that hypersnap has been running in a testnet network. Like there's no empirical evidence of this. And so
the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. We are running these nodes already, and at least as a Awesome.
Validator node is very different from a reader node. You can't say that you're running Hypersnap nodes and just say that, oh, I'm eligible for a validator.
That's not
You
what
have
I
to be
was saying.
a validator, like even if it's in testnet, to be able to like say that, okay, it has been running as a validator, participating in consensus and so on. It's very
Yeah.
different.
Well, okay. So if you can't present like qualifying criteria for testnet inclusion outside of it must be running Snapchain, then there's no way to build up the evidence that you're asking for.
No, I mean, do you have this running in a testnet environment? Like we can inspect that. It doesn't mean that there needs to be like, okay, we are the only ones running a testnet, and like you get added to that testnet. That's not the blocker here.
Yeah,
Like,
we
I've not
absolutely
heard of
saw.
like a Hypersnap testnet with Hypersnap validator nodes.
Yeah, we're happy to set one up. It's just simply that you shut us down instead of actually offering that opportunity.
The main point here is that like because of the fact that we have been running this network for since the acquisition, like we are taking on the responsibility of making sure that whatever is getting added is right. If you are fine taking on the responsibility of like running the testnet, then yes, we'd be happy to entertain that as well.
Great. Happy to work with you.
Sure. So yeah, you can set up the testnet. If you can share the URL where we can peer with that testnet, figure out the health in terms of like blocks getting generated, etc. That'll just help like kind of like provide more evidence about Hypersnap operating as a validator.
Sounds good.
Cool. I have a higher level question here. And usually I'm the one answering questions. So hopefully a question from me will get entertained, which is the validator discussion we had where not adding this Hypersnap validator is what created the fork. And now there's a fork, there's a token on that fork, the fork is running validators. Great. Why are we still talking about this in the sense that you already forked, right? What's the, like, what we have a fork, we have tokens on that fork, people are running that fork, there's clients on that fork. As far as I can tell, things are working as you want. Why are we spending so much time now adding that fork back over to this? Like, just there's the fork.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. So I'll answer that in three. I'll answer it in three parts. It's pretty straightforward. The first is Hypersnap was created because Snapchain itself does not support clients. Like you have to build backend indexers. You have to build a lot of tooling just to make a functional client to work or use one of your paid services. And so Hypersnap's very first thing that it changed, the only thing different at the time when the PR was first proposed in the first place was that it has its own indexing and APIs possible for clients to build on top of it directly instead of having to build their own backend. That was the first thing.
Then why does Quorum use our Merkle back or previously Merkle current Farcaster backend APIs instead of Hypersnap APIs?
It uses both, and it uses both because in order to actually import the warplet, you have to use your APIs to obtain it. The second piece to this is because DMs.
But it's not.
It uses it for way more than just the
Yeah, it uses our signers, it uses DMs, it uses warplet.
all the casts that are coming out of Quorum,
like
are coming
which
through.
again, we don't mind. We have obviously had those access up there. We haven't done anything to stop it. We are making Nanar free. But if it uses Farcaster client APIs, while your goal for building Hypersnap is for Hypersnap to have APIs, why doesn't it use Hypersnap APIs?
Because there are things that the Hypersnap APIs can't provide. Again, this comes down to supporting direct casts, which are on the back end.
It doesn't use them for
not
signers.
just direct casts.
Like signers are available for everybody. Like,
okay, you're like, I need to actually be able to answer your question.
Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing is that Quorum is a privacy-focused API. And so a user that is using its own signer is essentially saying, hey, I'm using a privacy-focused client. And as you're aware, you have users on Farcaster that are based in countries like Iran, where searching for privacy technology can actually put you in serious life or death danger. So our purpose of using the APIs is simply to hide the fact that it is quorum. However, and this is the key point, we are actually extending support so that we can have our own signer and use the Hypersnap APIs directly when the user chooses to do so. But the sole point is privacy preservation. It's to avoid the problem of users being put in danger. As the previous NSA chief said, we use metadata to kill people.
Okay. Just so it's understood where what I'm seeing here, and maybe some of what you said right now clarifies that, but we have a disagreement over which there was a fork, which is great. Like, I still think people should fork and run their own experiments, and timelines won't match, so go run your experiments. We have a fork, we have a token on that fork. There's the reason to fork was apparently to create new APIs, but the client on that fork doesn't actually use the APIs. It uses the previous client's API, at least for a bunch of things. And now we are trying to merge that fork back, which is like a pretty confusing thing. Like, it's not clear why all of this was needed if we just had to just like add a validator in a few months' time.
So the purpose is to help grow Farcaster together. Like, to answer your point of why is there a fork, simply put, you told me to do it.
Right. So just fork. Like, why are we spending time talking about this?
So we're talking about this because I thought that our goal here is to help grow Farcaster. And part of that means that like other developers are going to come to the table with other options. And right now, including on this call, not only is it not being entertained, I'm explicitly being interrupted half the time I'm trying to explain it.
The interruptions are unfortunate, shouldn't have happened. Sorry about that. I'm not fully, like, my understanding is the fork creates another option, which we are pro. The option creates a different timeline, which we are pro, because we are inevitably not going to be able to accommodate every request or timeline. In which case, there should exist two options, like, and people can pick.
Yeah,
we are still happy to. Sorry, go ahead. I wasn't interrupting this time, by the way. But go ahead.
Why can't they actually work together? Like, what's the hesitancy towards actually, having equal footing as participants on the network? If the goal is to decentralize eventually, like, you have a team that's like fiercely devoted to making that a reality.
There's no hesitancy. It's just a matter of timeline. Like, if all was needed was add a validator, we could have just waited a bit and added a validator. But if we have forked, it seems to me like if you're going to add that, like, we are having all of this discussion where not much has really happened. We've just spent a lot of time talking about it.
I beg to differ about not a lot has happened. Like, there's a huge amount of activity on the repo, and there's a huge amount of activity on the developer side. There's 4 different clients using these APIs now.
Great. In which case, they should just use the fork. Like, just go do things. Like, I just don't understand the point of discussing it so much.
I know the point for discussing this. And the point is that we should have one timeline because we're a small community and we should work together because we don't want to separate people, right? We don't want that. We want to actually have more tools so people can express themselves better into different aspects. So if one person has one kind of node and another has another kind of node, they should be compatible so we don't have 2 timelines, 2 clients. And so what Hypersnap is doing, I think it's making more tools accessible to, like, it's doing another thing, right? It's doing so.
I understand. Sorry for interrupting. We just have to move on, and I have to end in 3 minutes. I'm happy to. One, I don't think we'll ever all be on the same page about, hey, this is the timeline. Like, that's just not realistic. The timeline we put forward on this call is the timeline we have towards decentralization efforts we are making. Monan talked about testnet and Hypersnap setting up a testnet, which we are happy to look at. And if things go well, maybe we can accommodate in that timeline. The point I was making is there has been a lot of discussion about, hey, what you're doing as Farcaster and our team is not something that we are looking for. So we're going to go do something different, which you went and did something different, in which case keep doing something different. Like, I don't want to spend hours every week thinking about, hey, they did something different. Now we have to add it. Now we have to remove it. Now we have to add it. Like, that dance doesn't make sense to me.
But
that's
so
cool.
either,
But that's the main point of making community,
Oh,
right? This is a social platform. You have to hear the
again,
community. I mean, yes, you have to build the protocol and everything behind, but at the same time, you have to hear the community, right? Otherwise, what's the point
we
of
are
making a social
hearing,
network?
right, we are hearing, and clearly there's some differences. And what I'm saying is, we might not settle those differences. Like, there might not be a way to settle them. Like the timeline we proposed, if you don't prefer that timeline, that's fine. Have a different timeline with what you've built. And that optionality is good. And there's some differences we can settle and some we can't. And for differences we can't settle, optionality is good, and you should go use that timeline. And that's that. Emma, if you want to unmute, and then I have to end.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the intention is not to make people pick a side in any way. And if you want, you're saying go do the fork and maybe come back in 6 months. And maybe then we'll be in a place, it's really just the like internal capacity of our team can't take that on right now. But we're happy to like lay out the roadmap for how to get there in a very transparent way.
And that's a reasonable take, but I mean, this again comes down to whether or not we're compatible. Because if we're compatible, then there's no difference operationally. But I get it. I've
In
said
which
my
case, we didn't need the fork.
for telling me to fork off, so I got it.
But anyway, send us
No.
the testnet
I would
details.
push back a little bit there. That like there was no fork off. I understand
Yeah,
that
I mean, you already
became the
shared the screenshots
narrative.
of the DM I sent. There was no fork off. But anyway,
I
have to end.
I
Apologies,
think that
everybody.
that's important, Rish.
Yeah, Cassie.
I think it's important to talk about this. Why not? What? I don't. But what? I don't. Wait. What happens? Why they have to quit the call like this? Why they have to be? Mm. Yeah. How can you give evidence on something that you cannot run? Like if you cannot run a validator, you cannot have evidence of it working. Like if you shut down the door before you even enter the site, like so. mm, but and what is testnet? Yeah. Mm, yeah. But I wonder why there hasn't been any video calls or more talks about all of this, because this is really important. I feel like Farcaster is such a small place for it to split. It's such a bad thing for Farcaster if we split. So, um, mm, yeah, Luis or Feli Rami. Felirami. Luis or Felirami? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think one important point is that we are competing. Wait, so Farcaster is a small community that's shrinking every day. Every day is shrinking. Every day, people are not coming back, etc. Also, we're competing against TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc., etc. Right? So, if a startup with BC backup cannot work fast enough with the community to grow, then it will not grow at the pace that other companies with a lot of more money will. Like, have you seen TikTok? Have you seen how huge Instagram is? Like, and Fark X, it's like the main thing. So what do you want to be? That's the thing. And but at the same time, what is Farcaster? Who is it for? Like, we're getting so like is the thing is shrinking, the community is abandoning Farcaster. Have you seen the Reddit posts about Farcaster? Have you seen like the comments it gets? I have been to many events, and a lot of people tell me, oh, you're on Farcaster. Yeah, I remember back in the day when degen was the main thing, and there was a token and you could get paid and blah blah blah. That's the thing. That so attention is the market here. Social, it doesn't seem so, because if rich, so that proves the thing. Community first, community first. Wait, Eggman, one question for you. Ha- have you onboarded someone to Farcaster, like in person, and other than your partner, like some stranger people? Because I have, and it's terrible. Like, yeah, no, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's way like you. Yeah, yeah, Kenny. Yeah, go. Yeah. Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Why not just use Reddit? Because it's yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Okay. Mm. Also, you remember channels being great. Like you will go into a channel and you will see like the whole like it. You had the feature to pin a cast to the channel, even 3 pins, and then you can see that it was great at the time. Channels, I remember, and then they added like a like gate listing for channels. Yeah, it was great. I remember that. But I don't know what happened with channels. Like they just disappeared into the shadows, or I don't remember well. Like what happened? Yeah. Mm. Weird, right? Weird. Mm. Okay, I think. Mm. And is that that investigation is somewhere? Like it's in a link or somewhere? Yeah, thank you. Mm. Or less, maybe even less, right? Mm. But wait, why if but Emma, for example, X recently published their algorithm. Has Neinar thought about publishing the algorithm for Farcaster so it's more open? Mm. Yeah, I have seen. Yeah, I have seen in other platforms. Mm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I say that too. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Cassandra. And everyone. Yeah, we will. Yeah, thank you.